Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Warmies, coming to you live from the Sports Interaction Studio. The Calgary Flames about to play game number 4 of a 6-game road trip as they look to conclude their season and remain in the 30th place in the NHL standings and in the third spot for the NHL draft lottery positioning. Mike Gould's here with you. Once again, this is the Warmies as the Flames get set to take on the Dallas Stars at the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. The Flames 32, 36, and 8. The Stars 45, 20, and 12. And the Flames coming off of a victory in their most recent game 3 days ago, back on Saturday night, when they took on the Anaheim Ducks and beat them by a 5-3 score at the Honda Center. Let's just kick things off first and foremost with a look at our betting lines, courtesy of the folks over at Sports Interaction, where every game is your game when you bet with Sports Interaction. From puck drop to overtime, bet with Canada's homegrown sportsbook. 19 plus, please play responsibly. As we have a look here at the opening betting lines, of course, as you might expect, the Flames are not the favorites at plus 200. The Stars at minus 250. The over-under set at 6 goals, and the spread at plus or minus 1.5. This is a game, the only game the Flames play in Dallas this season. They played against them twice in Calgary already. They beat them in a shootout 3-2 on November the 22nd, and then got creamed 6-1 at home right before the trade deadline, if you'll remember, back on March the 3rd. And so this one will be the rubber match in Dallas. The Flames taking on a very good Stars team that ranks second in the Western Conference with 45, 20, and 12 record through 77 games this year. They have 102 points, pretty much guaranteed to play the Minnesota Wild in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It'll be a battle of two of the top teams in the entire National Hockey League. In fact, two of the top 5 teams going head-to-head in round number 1, because that's just how the NHL operates with their playoff format. To their credit, the Flames coming off a big win a couple of days ago. It was in Anaheim, a building where they no longer struggle after having done so for over a decade. But they got a lot of good scoring depth from guys like Joel Farabee and Ryan Strome. Matt Vagridden got his 6th goal of the season. Morgan Frost got goal number 20 and 21 of the 25-26 campaign. And the Flames carved out a win on road ice. Now in Dallas against a Stars team that is, I would say, a couple of tiers better than the Ducks. The Flames will trot out a slightly different lineup, and we'll see exactly how it looks as we move forward from here. But let's just take a look at the preliminary combinations for the Flames, courtesy of our friends over at Daily Faceoff, based on the skate earlier. Adar Suniev, or is it Idar Suniev? Ryan Pike is in the chat. Pike, just remind me, is it Idar or Adar? I think it's Idar. He will line up with Ryan Strome and Marty Pospisil on line number 3 for the Calgary Flames in this game. Idar Suniev has been one of the few bright spots with the Wranglers this season. And thank you, Pike. It is indeed Idar. If you'll recall, the Flames got the Idar Suniev pick from the New Jersey Devils alongside Yegor Sharangovich in that trade for Tyler Toffoli back in 2023. And regardless of your thoughts on Sharangovich, I think it's safe to say that trade has turned out pretty well for the Calgary Flames, considering how short a period of time Toffoli ended up playing in New Jersey, less than a full season. Well, they've gotten about 60 total goals out of Sharangovich over his 3 seasons in Calgary. And Suniev, in his first season of pro after playing 2 years at UMass Amherst, has 15 goals in 55 games with the AHL's Wranglers this season. Now, 15 goals in 55 games might not seem like that much, but on this Wranglers team, he is one of only 5 players with 15 goals this year, the others being Marty Ferk, Rory Cairns, Dryden Hunt, and Sam Morton. And, you know, depending on how you feel about Cairns, and evidently there's some folks in the chat who think he should be recalled, and I don't necessarily disagree, but you could make a decent point that maybe Suniev is the only actual prospect of those 5. The other 4 are pretty established pros at this point in their careers, and Suniev is definitely not a pro, or at least an established pro. He is a first-year pro. He is a rookie for all intents and purposes. So we saw Suniev play his NHL debut with the Flames in the season finale in 24-25, and now he gets back in after being recalled just a couple of days ago. So excited to see what Suniev can do. That line with Strome has been very, very good. Obviously, we have seen Ryan Strome put up some big numbers since coming over from those Anaheim Ducks. He got his 500th NHL point against his former team on Saturday. Marty Pospisil on the right side of that trio. So I like the look of it. The other lines, Sharangovich with Zary and Klapka. I like the look of that line. Sharangovich has played some good hockey in the last couple of months. Zary, I mean, they're trying to get him back up to speed. And Klapka, I mean, he's Adam Klapka. He basically does the same thing on a nightly basis, and that is be big, win battles, and clear up space for his line mates. Farabee back with Frost, like seeing that, as well as Matt Bay-Gridden on the right side of them. We saw Gridden score his 6th goal, add an assist in that win over the Ducks. He's up to 17 points in 32 games this year. And then Michael Backlund with Blake Coleman and Matt Coronado on line number 1. Looking at the defensive side of things for the Calgary Flames, we see Kevin Ball with Zach Whitecloud, Yan Kuznetsov with Zane Parekh, and the third pairing, which to me is more of a second pairing, Olli Mata with Hunter Brzustevich. Now, do I really want to relitigate the Vancouver versus Calgary stuff that's been going on the last week? Probably not. I think something that's been lost in the shuffle of all that discourse is, obviously we are comparing these two teams and where they're at. By the same token, though, I feel like we just lose sight of how individualistic prospect development is. And Hunter Brzustevich and Tom Willander, who is the guy who has been compared to Brzustevich by many people, including myself, they are on different trajectories as NHL players. They're on similar pathways, as far as their age and their size. They have similar, body types, just as young pro prospects. But they're obviously, going to divert in certain areas, or diverge, I should say. With Brzustevich, though, I mean, I have just been so impressed by the progression over even over the last month, but just all year long and dating back to last year. You can look at one of those guys and say he's a first round pick, and you can look at the other and say he's a third rounder. And that's a very binary way of looking at it, in my opinion. I think Brzustevich has followed a development trajectory akin to what a first rounder might typically do since he was drafted, dominating the OHL after being drafted, going immediately to the AHL in only his second post-draft season as a relatively young player in that league, a guy who was 19 when he first started playing there, turned 20 shortly thereafter, and looked the part of a top 4 guy in the AHL at a young age, really blossomed into that role. And now already, to me, looks so mature as a young NHLer. To me, the last piece of the puzzle for Brzustevich is, let's get a new number. I think number 48 kind of looks a little minor league to me. Well, the good news for Hunter Brzustevich is that the number that he wore with the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL, number 4, it recently became available here in Calgary thanks to the departure of Rasmus Andersson. I think Brzustevich should switch to number 4 at the start of next season. I think he'd look pretty darn good wearing that digit, and I think it would just reinforce the idea that he belongs in the NHL. He gets to pick his own number, and I really do think he does belong. I think he has been outstanding, and I think the Flames are very, very well equipped with Hunter Brzustevich in the lineup for them. Let's have a look at the Dallas Stars. Obviously, this is a very, very good team. They're going with 11 forwards today. Wyatt Johnston, though, is a very good center on that top line, and he's flanked by a couple of very good wingers, Jason Robertson and Mikko Rantanen. Matt Duchene playing with Jamie Benn and Colin Blackwell on line number 2. Justin Ritskowian with Maverick Bourque and Oscar Bach on line number 3. And then the 2 extra forwards are Adam Ernie and Arttu Huru. That's not Hyrie, it's Huru on line number 4, or I guess the 2 extra forwards for the Dallas Stars. Looking at the defensive side of things for Dallas, it is 7 defensemen. Esa Lindell with Miro Heiskanen, and that's a tried and true defensive pairing that we have not just seen in the NHL, but also in international competition with Team Finland. Thomas Harley with Nils Lundqvist, another Finn for this Dallas team. Leon Bichelle with Ilya Lyubushkin on pairing number 3. And, of course, the extra defender, Tyler Myers, who the Stars acquired from the Vancouver Canucks ahead of the deadline. Myers had been expected to go to the Detroit Red Wings, did not agree to go there, and ended up going to his home state instead. So Myers, the extra for Dallas here today. The goaltending matchup for this game, it is Devin Cooley for the Calgary Flames. Cooley's numbers this year, obviously fantastic, and we saw his excellent interview on After Hours with Eric Francis and Scott Oake. Scott Oake, who is retiring at the end of this season, a big loss for Hockey Night in Canada broadcast going forward. Wish him all the best. He's going up against Jake Ottinger, not Scott Oak, Devin Cooley going up against Jake Ottinger. Ottinger this year, 31, 12, and 6, with a save percentage exactly at 900 in 50 games for the Dallas Stars. So Ottinger against Devin Cooley, a couple of American goaltenders, of course, Ottinger from Minnesota and Cooley, the California product, who in 29 games this year is 10, 9, and 5 with a 913 save percentage. So that's a look at the lineups, the defensive pairings, and the goaltending battle. And that is brought to you by the folks over at your Prairie Toyota dealers. If you're looking to dominate off the ice as much as your team does on it, check out the Toyota Tacoma. Its standard I-Force engine boasts an impressive towing capacity of up to 6,400 pounds. In fact, it's the most powerful Tacoma ever. So whether you're hauling gear to the rink or heading to an away game, you can tackle it with ease. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Prairie Toyota dealer during Red Tag days from March through May. Obviously, with Idar Suniev coming into the lineup today for the Calgary Flames, it's going to be more of a prospect-focused evening. Hopefully, Suniev can, do what some of his fellow young players have done in their exposures to the NHL action with the Flames this season, whether it's Perek, whether it's Brstevich, whether it's Brennan Othman, who we saw come up for a couple of games and score a couple of points. Hopefully, Suniev can have a similar impact. On the similar tone of prospects, we have been following along with something over the last month, which finally became a little bit more relevant for fans in Calgary here today. Our friend Scott Wheeler over at The Athletic has been running through his list of the prospect pools in the NHL ranked from worst to best. And it has taken quite some time for Scott to get to the Calgary Flames. Well, today it did come out for the Flames, who Scott has ranked at number 3 in the entire NHL in terms of their prospect pool. Now, actually, you know what? Producer Michael, just if you have a chance, just scroll back and maybe grab my own prospect tiers as well, because I'm going to go check out Scott's list right now. I'm going to sort of share some insights from Scott's list. And I just want to sort of compare as well, put up my own list. So don't put that up just yet, producer Michael, but maybe if you can go back and get it, we'll just do a little bit of comparison in a second, because I do want to highlight that Scott's list and my own tier list, which I published a couple of weeks ago, they're not that different. One area in which we do diverge, Scott and I, we both have Perek, Gridden, and Reshny above everybody else. They're on sort of a tier of their own, at least in my tier list. Scott, though, has Zane Perek still in his own tier, above everybody else. And I understand why. He's, one of the highest draft picks on the Flames roster and has, stepped in as a very young player and not necessarily looked out of place. Scott's got Perek at 1. This is interesting, though. He's got Cole Reshny over Matvei Gridden in tier 2. And obviously, Matvei Gridden has had an excellent acclimation process to the NHL with 17 points in 32 games this season. And Scott is a huge fan of Matvei Gridden's, as am I. But I think it's a huge testament to the impressive rookie year that Cole Reshny had with the University of North Dakota and is still having. They're in the Frozen Four just this coming weekend. He has 35 points in 35 games at Nodak as an 18-year-old center. We don't typically see that level of production from a young player in the NCAA, especially on a good program like North Dakota. So that's an interesting part of it. I'm not going to spoil the whole list. There are, plenty of ways to see who Scott has in his top 15. And of course, it is paywalled over The Athletic. I will just sort of complete the top 5, though. It goes Reshny, then Gridden, followed by Cullen Potter, and then followed by Ethan Wittenbach. Those two guys also in Scott's top 15 or top 5 rather, over in his list at The Athletic. Now, the Flames, they are number 3. The two teams that Scott has yet to rank are the Chicago Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks, who my expectation will go in that order, in 2 and then in number 1. I will sort of tie back a thread to the Vancouver Canucks, though, because on Scott's rankings, they are at number 15. Now, there is a point to be fair. Zeev Boyum is not included in Scott's list of top Vancouver Canucks prospects. If he were included, he deems him to have graduated to the NHL already. They'd probably be in the top 10 at the very minimum, maybe a little bit higher. But still, the Flames are one of the very best young prospect pools, or they have one of the very best young prospect pools in the entire National Hockey League. And I think that is represented on Scott's list, where the depth really sticks out. He lists 7 different honorable mentions on top of the 15 players. pardon me, who he ranks. Um, in 15th place is Andrew Basha, who, I think very highly of. And I think, I sort of have in a similar spot. Producer Michael, do we have my own Flames tier list? Let's put it up. Here it is. So just comparing this to what Scott put out today. For example, Scott also considers Hunter Brustevich to be a prospect for the Calgary Flames, and he has him sort of in a similar spot. He's got him at 4. In fact, or no, he's got him a little bit lower. Scott has him, I think, at 6. But generally speaking, all these guys are in similar spots. I'm maybe a little bit higher on Andrew Basha, but I will readily defer to Scott, who definitely views these guys on a much more consistent basis than I do. And I like to think that I watch these guys a fair bit, but Scott has, all sorts of schedules for where he looks at these guys. Nevertheless, I think it's, no matter how you slice it, there's sort of starting to be a consensus forming around exactly where the Flames sit. And of course, none of this includes the Flames' formidable draft capital over the next little while. They've got 2 first rounders this year. They've got 4 second rounders this year. They've got 2 first rounders in 27, 2 first rounders in 28 as well. And even on the side of the prospects who are already here, look at Cole Reshney in the middle there. Flames director of player development Ray Edwards said today that Cole Reshney has put on as much as 8 to 9 pounds of muscle during this season with North Dakota to become a stronger presence down the middle with the Fighting Hawks. So these Flames players, they're continuing to develop. The prospect pool is very, very strong. It is easy as Flames fans and as Flames people who cover the Flames to adopt a bit of a defeatist mode about the Flames and sort of say, oh, these guys, we just think they're good because we don't know what good prospects are, or we think they're good because we see them a lot. They're compared to other pools, it's not so good. This is a neutral observer saying that the Flames are third. They have the third best prospects in the league, and I think we're kidding ourselves if we don't consider guys like Cole Reshney and Matt Bay-Gridden to be genuinely special young players for this Flames organization. If a guy like Cole Reshney, who has 35 points in 35 games as an NCAA freshman at age 18, were so dime a dozen, there would be more prospects around the league with production like that. And as it stands, it's just not true. There are players drafted much higher than Cole Reshney who have had much, much more difficult acclimation processes to the NCAA. I mean, and for varieties of reasons. Some of them are injury related, some of them just bad deployment, some of them for other reasons. So the Flames are very fortunate to have 2, I mean, not even just Reshney, also Cullen Potter, a couple of centers in the NCAA at age 18 who are already point of game type guys down there. And of course, they have the ability to be able to support whoever does come in at the top of the draft. And boy, oh boy, we might have to have Scott on. We'll definitely have Stephen Ellis on our back burner shows as we get a little bit closer to the draft to handicap exactly who might be there. One thing that has really stuck out to me over the last few days, because it has been an interesting few days. One of our clips from the Warmies went relatively viral and was, eliciting strong responses from, fans on both sides of the aisle, as it were, from Vancouver and Calgary, talking about how the Flames pool compares to the Canucks pool. And, while I still stand by what I said about Hunter Brustevich being, a comparable prospect to Tom Willander, I still believe in that. I definitely do sit here on this Tuesday afternoon and say, it's not like the Flames should say they've got enough defense prospects. It's not like they can afford to sort of sit back and say, we've got that covered. And with all the defensemen who are available in this year's draft, I don't think it is unreasonable to sit here and say, we like Zane Parekh, Hunter Brustevich, Henry Muse, Yan Kuznetsov, Abram Weeb, Etienne Morin, whoever you like. But still, there is plenty of opportunity. There's not, as much as we like those guys, there are organizations, there's still plenty of organizational need for a capable two-way lefty. And as much as I do, think Yan Kuznetsov is a good young player, he's not a two-way guy. He's more of a one-way guy. They could really stand to get a guy like Carson Karls who models his game after Jake Sanderson. I think there is still plenty of opportunity for the Flames to look honestly at where they are and say, yeah, I mean, we still think our defense is comparable to some of the better young pools in the league, but we want more. And I don't think there is any one position as we sit here where the Flame can say, um, we're set. Maybe in goal, but even then, I mean, if you look at the center depth, they could still always use more. They could still use guys at the top to push other guys down the depth chart. It's the same on the wings, even as much as you like Matt Vigrid and Ethan Wittenbach and Matt Coronado. So I think that it's premature to get ahead of ourselves and say, they have what they need at any given position. And as much as they might have a good pool, they can always make it a lot better. And Scott made it very clear in the opening lines of his Flames article today that as good as their pool is, it's not even close to the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks, who kind of have everybody beat. So lots of room for improvement. The Flames have the pieces needed to pull it off. Let's have a look at some of the betting lines, some of the same game parlays for today's game, brought to you by Sports Interaction. And for whatever reason, when I went to screenshot these over at SI, everything on the page was in English except for this. I don't know what this is all about, but I will say I do have a little bit of experience working some international hockey events. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of doing public address announcing at the Hlinka Gretzky Memorial Tournament up in Red Deer, Alberta. And I had a great time, and I had to announce everything in English and French. I had to say Canada goal, boo d'équipe Canada, scored by number 12, marqué par le numéro 12, and then say the names and numbers. So now my first rodeo. So here's the pre-built same game parlays and one of them is Flames, one of them is Dallas. So if the resultat is Flames match, or if they win, and if they score more than 2 goals, or bout d'équipe Flames plus de 2.5, or I guess that is 2.5 plus 700. And if Matt Coronado scores in the game, Boutier, Matt Coronado, mash. It's not my. I gotta pull up Duolingo. If all three of those things happen, if the Flames win, if they score more than 2.5 goals, and if Matt Coronado scores one of those goals, it pays off at plus 700. And I'm sorry, Brad S 2041. Ow, my ears. I'm sorry. And then the second one, total debut, plus de 5.5 or 5.5. So if there's more than 5.5 goals in the game, if Jason Robertson scores in the game, and if Matt Coronado scores in the game, so this is actually a goal prop on both sides, then it pays out at plus 750. So those are a couple pretty intriguing ones. And word is you might have to use those special French dollars to take part over at Sports Interaction. I don't know what's going on. So head on over to Sports Interaction Sportsbook and Casino and check out those particular options. Once again, it is sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. And I assure you, most of the bets are not listed in French. Some more questions from the folks in the chat. Mike, my question is, why do the In the Dome boys hate Huska so much? I think he's a good coach for development / where we're at right now. And once we are competitive, we bring in someone who's built for winning. I agree. I honestly, my take on Ryan Huska, I don't really have a take on Ryan Huska. I think he is one of the more straight down the middle coaches in the league. He's maybe a little milk with toast, but he gets the job done. And then the thing is, if Craig goes and wants to replace Ryan Huska, all it really does is put more pressure on himself. I mean, the Flames are at the point right now where they don't really have a whole lot of pressure on them. They're still in the saddle though. Nobody expects them to be good. In fact, nobody even really wants them to be good. People want them to score more, but at the same time, if they lose games, it's a means to an end. If you fire that guy, what message are you sending? That you really want things to change? Well, what do you want to change? Do you want to get worse? No. If you fire a coach right now, it's because you want to improve right away. And I think that would go over quite poorly with most of the fan base if you fired the coach. Where you can understand it is if players are not developing well. And I'm at least a little encouraged over the last month by how Matt Coronado and by how Matt Vigrid have upped their games, and how by Hunter Brzustevich and Zane Parekh have upped their own games. So I'm not altogether that concerned. I think with Huska, he's the kind of guy who holds the fort for the time being and who you can swap out basically the moment that you're ready to level up. And we've seen that numerous times. I mean, it's sort of the same role that Jeff Blashill occupied with the Detroit Red Wings and maybe is now occupying with the Chicago Blackhawks. The only problem is that Detroit didn't really level up once they swapped him out for Todd McClellan, but the Flames obviously would be hoping to avoid that outcome in the near future. So I don't really think it's that much of a priority. I think the priority this summer is to be clearing out the forward logjam. I think Blake Coleman is the first guy to go. I think there are a number of guys who will go shortly thereafter. But for now, I don't think there's a huge urge to push out the head coach. I think he's doing a fine job. I don't really care. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about that. It's hard to say. I mean, really, it is a tightrope that you have to walk down when you're a rebuilding team. You want your guys to play well, but you also don't want to win too much. And it's really difficult to thread that needle. And I think the Flames have turned this year to an acceptable standard, I would say. Now we'll see how they do tonight against the Stars team that really has had their number over the years. I mean, obviously the Flames beat them in the playoffs, but they've always been a tough matchup for the Flames. I remember one of the first games I ever went to as a kid was Mike Ribeiro just dominating the Flames at the Saddledome, and it seemed like he always had their number. But now we'll see. The Flames have 6 games left in the 25-26 regular season, and then it's on to the draft lottery. So we got to get through these games no matter what, and we will see how it all unfolds this evening. On the afterburner for tonight's game, obviously on our previous game on Saturday, we had the In the Dome boys on the show. And for today, I believe it is myself. I just want to double check this. I have to pull it up. For Tuesday, April the 7th, it is not me. It is Cammie and Pike. Oh, thank goodness. I think I have the final 5 shows of the year. Let me just double check. I'm on 4 of the final 5 shows this year. I will admit I am okay having the night off tonight after a Flames Dallas game. They can be a little dull sometimes, but I think maybe we'll see some interesting action tonight. It is Pike and Cammie on the post gamer tonight on the afterburner. So after the game, even if it's a boring one, they're never boring. Stick around, hang out on the afterburner, enjoy the show. For now, my name is Mike Gould. Thank you so much for tuning in. And one more time before we head out, we want to tell you about a big opportunity right now because over at GMC, it is Truck Month. And if you want to upgrade your ride, you can take advantage of all the offers available on the 2026 Sierra 1500 Pro Graphite Crew Cab with its 2-inch factory lift off-road suspension and a 5.3-liter V8 that delivers the kind of power you actually feel when you hit the gas. During Truck Month, you can take it for your very own. Head on over to a GM dealer near you for Truck Month. Folks, thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Been another fun one. We got 6 more games to go in this 25-26 Flames season. We'll see. Will this be the year they finally get a top 3 draft pick? If the season ended today, they'd have the 3rd best odds heading into the lottery. I like that luck. We'll see. My name is Mike Gould. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to producer Michael out in Toronto. Flames versus Dallas Stars coming up in a matter of moments. Until then, you have been watching this edition of the Warmies.
Hey, buddies. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Also, if you could throw in a like and subscribe, it does help us out with what it is we are doing. And check out more at flamesnation.ca.